whether you want to call it gridlock, whether you want to call it tug of war, the House is now in Republican hands. The Senate is now in the hands of the Democrats. So there's real questions about what kind of political risk you need to plan around. Joining us from Washington with what to expect is Stanley Collender. He's one of the leading experts on the federal budget and congressional budget process. He's now managing director for Qorvis Communications. Good morning to you, Stan. Jumped out at me that you're looking at a 50-50 shot here of a government shutdown, and that's before the new blood makes it to Washington.
Right. I think it could happen as early December, when the current funding bill that keeps all the agencies operating runs out. It seems to me a couple of different things. One, it's possible, and therefore you should consider the possibility. Second, it may be politically smart for someone like a Senator Jim DeMint to actually try to shut down the government and to seal the deal with the people who just voted for the Tea Party types.
But what would that accomplish, though? I mean, does it, in the Clinton era, it was a very different circumstance, economy in a very different state, but essentially it helped the president win back sort of public will. What would that accomplish now?
Well, the answer is nothing really good for the economy, but it really would put the White House and Democrats in Congress behind the political 8-ball. It would demonstrate very clearly that a lot of the folks who've just been elected, I'm going to call them Tea Party types, but it's broader than that, no longer think that compromise is the way to go, that they're looking for capitulation and are willing to do some extreme things to get there. Would it result in contractor payments being delayed? Might it result in layoffs at contractors and maybe federal employees? Absolutely. Would it be good for the economy? Short term, no. But those people who are thinking about a shutdown think that it's ultimately going to get them where they want to go and get the economy where it wants to go, because they'll be able to push the White House on spending cuts and tax cuts.
Is it that clear cut? I mean, when it comes to trying to project who's going to fall where along party lines, because, the point's been made as recently today in a number of papers that, 23 Democrats facing re-election in the next 2 years. They may not necessarily stay party loyal. They may try to go more independent, distance themselves from the kind of backlash that the president just got.
Well, I've certainly seen those same analyses, but you've got to remember that the Democrats who are left in Congress are actually a little bit more to the left as a party than they were before the election, because a lot of the so-called blue dogs and more conservatives, but if they don't, the Democrats have to start paying attention to their base as well as the independents. And one of the things we've seen is they've got to fight this kind of shutdown and not capitulate, because the independents will just continue to go with the Republicans under those circumstances.
We keep hearing about the possibility or the promise, right, that there are going to be a fair amount of subpoenas, that there is going to be political drama on the Hill. And of course, Darrell Iss's name has been thrown around in regard to that. Strategically, what does that actually accomplish for the Republican Party in terms of setting them up for 2012?
Well, Republicans have a little bit of a dilemma here. On the one hand, they've got to play to their base and maintain that. Second, though, they've got to worry about how do they maintain the independents. And if you look at any of the polls, any of the exit polling from a week or so ago, it shows that those types of activities, that type of extreme partisanship, doesn't play well with the independents. But, and here's the real change from the previous years, it used to be at this point that you would assume that the base is going to go with you. That they have no place else to go but to stay with you, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. Now it's fairly clear, especially on the Republican side, that the base does have someplace else to go, and they're perfectly willing to go there. That is to challenge the establishment in the next election, in primaries, those types of things, if they don't get what they want. So I look at that, some of the threats that Congressman is making as saying, we're going to show the base that we mean what we're going to say. It's going to be that way for about 2 years. I think it's going to be bitter and partisan, and people are going to be very angry by what they see in Washington.
Well, is the business community really going to be any happier in terms of the relationship between the administration and Wall Street?
Well, let's just broaden that a little bit. In 95 and 96, the last time we had this kind of gridlock and shutdowns, the economy was growing by 10% a year. We had the dot-com boom. And the one thing business wanted was for the government not to mess it up. Now it's almost just the opposite. We've got slow growth in the economy, and business is looking to the government to do something, somehow, to get it right. I'm not sure gridlock is going to be as popular with the business community as it was 15 years ago.
Right. And then the Republican Party, is that going to be as business friendly, given that you have those, as you were saying, still Tea Party associated candidates in there? Now legislators.
Well, and that's the interesting thing, is that a number of the policies that the Tea Party types are talking about, which is spending cuts, tax cuts, the spending cuts are not going to help the economy short term. In fact, they will likely damage it. Short term, not long term. The possibility of a showdown over a debt ceiling is also not going to help Wall Street and encourage confidence in what the government is or can do. Under those circumstances, you would expect the business community to either put a lot of pressure on the Republicans or to leave it in droves for the next election if this is what the next 2 years are going to look like.
So you're saying the odds here, 50-50 for a government shutdown, might even happen before the new blood's in there. On the tax front, on the unemployment benefits front, anything happen before December 31st?
Well, probably not. I'm assuming that the tax changes will happen early next year rather than this year. It's certainly possible they will happen, before the end of the year. That would make a great deal of sense in terms of eliminating uncertainty for taxpayers. But politically, it might be better for the Republicans to do it when they've got more control. That is, when they're at least in charge of one house next year and can take credit. But there are other issues that the shutdown is going to be threatened over. That is, spending any money on regulations for Dodd-Frank, spending any money on implementation for health care reform, for example. All of that could come together in one big bill early December, early next year.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us there from Washington, Stan Collender.
My pleasure.